Hey everybody, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. Welcome to our Run Durability webinar. This webinar is part of our educational outreach and content series where we're trying to share the lessons we've learned inside the team. A huge part of how we operate, and you'll see just simply by what I'm going to do today, is sharing information, sharing experiences, hopefully helping people have to avoid recreating the wheel, and et cetera. As we are less gurus inside the team as we are guinea pigs, educators, leaders. I do more to lead than I do to sort of chastise or motivate you. Endurance Nation is a very unique space, and this webinar manifests that. So today we've got a bunch that we're going to talk about. Before I dive in, some administrative things for you. This is roughly going to be about 40 minutes of talking, and then I've got 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. It will be recorded, so you'll get that at the end of the webinar. Hey everybody, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. Welcome to our Run Durability webinar. This webinar is part of our educational outreach and content series where we're trying to share the lessons we've learned inside the team. A huge part of how we operate, and you'll see just simply by what I'm going to do today, is sharing information, sharing experiences, hopefully helping people have to avoid recreating the wheel, and et cetera. As we are less gurus inside the team as we are guinea pigs, educators, leaders. I do more to lead than I do to sort of chastise or motivate you. Endurance Nation is a very unique space, and this webinar manifests that. So today we've got a bunch that we're going to talk about. Before I dive in, some administrative things for you. This is roughly going to be about 40 minutes of talking, and then I've got 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. It will be recorded, so you'll get that at the end of the webinar, so you don't have to worry about that. And you'll also get a copy of the slides in addition to the actual screencast, so you'll be all set. Those of you not on the team, I'll also be sending out an opportunity for you to create a free trial to the team, so please definitely stay tuned to your inboxes for that as well. The way that I handle questions, I ask you to put them in the webinar chat box there on the side of your screen. You can type them in, and then I'll come back and answer them all at the end. So please know, if you ask me a question at minute 7, like, wait, go back, say that again, I'm not going to see that until the end. But I will stick around and I will answer those questions. And so even if you can't, they'll be in the recording and you'll get them there. But if you can stick around, you'll get the live answers as well. So you can do that. All right. So with that said, run durability, right? Using run durability to build a breakthrough triathlon season. The reason why I'm doing this webinar, and the reason why we have a change in focus towards more run durability work inside the team, is that we began piloting run durability as a separate plan for our more advanced athletes back in 2014, 2015. And we gave this plan to athletes as an opportunity for them, having proven their experience and training and ability to race and put together a good race plan. We gave them this plan as an opportunity to show they can continue to build their run across a year. Took out a lot of the intensity because they've been doing it for years, and let's see what happens, right? It's something that I've done before, but let's see what happens. And we were definitely blown away by the results that people had over time. They were healthier, they were faster, even though they weren't doing more speed work, and their race performances improved significantly. And we'll get into each of those aspects here in today's webinar. But for us inside Endurance Nation, run durability has become one of our cornerstones for the 2016 season and ostensibly beyond as well. So I have a couple key points here that I want to hit with you today, and hopefully I'll be able to communicate all of them and give you a sense of not only where we're coming from, but the why, and then help you do a better sense of making sure that you're doing the right work this winter leading into next season, okay? Before I dive in quickly, some background here on Endurance Nation. I started by Coach Rich, my business partner Rich Strauss on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. In 2007, we are an online community of self-coached endurance athletes. And what that means is that we are all peers. When I race, I share my data. When you race, you share your data. When someone else comes to learn about that race, they can see all of our data. And together, we are cumulatively smarter, and better than anyone else could ever be on our own. All of our training plans and resources are targeting the age group triathlete. So, stay-at-home mother of four, got that, super crazy busy professional who works 60 hours a week. Got that crazy professional who was also a mom. Got that, all the way up to folks in their 60s and beyond who are retired, still very, very active, have high performance related goals. The net is, no matter who you are, where you're at, we've got plans that fit your schedule and will allow you to achieve your goals in the manner with which fits your life, which is our most important part. There's a lot of places out there where they give you plans where you have to make crazy sacrifices in your world, and that's not how we operate inside Endurance Nation. I tell people when I call them on their welcome call to join the team, I say, look, I work for you. If you tell me you can't swim on this day, or you can't bike on that day, or you need to do this on that day, it's my job to figure it out, not yours. And that's how we work together. Okay. We are also the creators of the 4 keys of race execution, the only race execution specific guidance out there in the triathlon space, as well as the first time finish guarantee. Anyone who signs up, we make sure you finish that first half or full distance race. And if you don't, we pay for your next one. The net being, we have great plans. We have incredible race execution resources. We've got a community to keep you motivated, and we guarantee you finish by backing that up with our checkbook. You're not going to find anything else like that inside the triathlon space. There's a whole lot more, but that's the net of it, so okay? All the things that separate us, I think really it comes down to the knowledge. If you're doing Wisconsin for the first time, or Racine for the first time, or Vineman, they just fired up an Ironman on the Vineman course for 2016. You probably know nothing about that race, even though you're signed up. We've got that information. We've got that experience here inside the house, not only from the general racing and pacing execution related items, but also race specific race reports. You can talk to people who've done those races. You can learn from them. That element of the team is unsurpassed. It's one of the reasons why we are second time, soon to be third time Division I Ironman Tri-Club Global World Champions, because we have a team that is not only active on the race scene, but also very competitive by virtue of what we do. So certainly worth checking us out, not just for stuff like this, but just, in general, want to be better. So who am I? Coach Patrick, when I'm not racing and wearing ridiculously large hats on my head. I started coaching back in 2004. I started racing in 2001, did Eagleman that year, and then Florida. Got into coaching full-time by 2004, which means since 2004, this has been my full-time job. It's coaching triathletes. So just like you are a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor, a nurse, whatever your profession may be, I do that for triathlon coaching. So just like I would come to you for accounting advice or legal advice or facts on my car or how to take care of my body, you two come to me to talk about triathlon, and my job is to get you square. So the resume 22, I believe, I can't remember. Ironman finishes, 927 personal best. Just raced Hawaii for the 7th time. Performed. I think I've won every possible 1 through 5 place in my age group across the years. I think I'm missing one of them. I'm not sure which one it is. But I won my age group in Texas of 2012. I am your East Coast coach, the running coach inside Endurance Nation. Former Peace Corps, spent my time in Central Asia and Uzbekistan, and then headed over to Azerbaijan and did international development for another year, the International Rescue Committee, before I came back to grad school, and got derailed by not only the beautiful woman you see next to me here, but also the sport of triathlon. Kind of never looked back. So live in Rhode Island now. And this is what I do: travel to races, travel to camps, coach athletes on the phone all day, getting people set, and doing things like this, preparing this run durability information for you. So let's step back for a second as we talk about this run durability issue. And the reason why we brought up run durability for this webinar as a topic for the world, not just for Endurance Nation, but for the world, is to really communicate that that race day as a coach is really not a ton of fun when it gets to the run, because you see people all around you. I'm standing out there. I was just at Ironman Florida, standing at the entrance to the park, and I am just seeing people fall apart. People are just miserable, suffering. It was definitely hot on the run in Florida this year after a brutal swim and normal bike. It was very hot on the run. People are suffering and they're fading. And I'm reminded once again in this case, and from a race context, of not only how hard our sport is, but how hard it is to be successful at our sport. And when it comes to running, there's just no hiding from the fact that if you're not ready to run well on race day, whether that's from a pacing perspective, a nutrition perspective, or a fitness perspective, which is what we're primarily concerned with today, then your race times will suffer dramatically. You can have a great swim and a good bike, and if you go from a 10-minute mile run, which you were hoping to hold, and you get that through halfway, and you go to an 18-mile run for the back 13, you've added, whatever that is, 104, 1 hour and 44 minutes to your overall race time by virtue of the second half of that marathon. And so our job as coaches is to help eliminate that experience and improve your ability to race. Okay. And I think a lot of it comes down to the mindset of triathletes. They really kind of bring out this concept that, they wear triathlon on their sleeve. They love exercising. They're all about it. You've got stickers on your car. You're wearing, crazy shoes to work. You're eating gluten-free now. Any chance you have to wear a visor, even at like a work function, you would wear a visor. Whatever that may be, triathlon permeates your life. But in reality, triathlon is a very, 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 very small part of everything that you do. And it's important when we think about improving the run and working on the run. I want you to step back and just think about it from a systems-wide perspective. You look at that pie chart on your screen and you see that training, this is what training 12 hours a week, which is pretty comparable for either half or full distance athletes, except for perhaps some of the bigger weeks. It's a ridiculously small part of that 168 hours you have in a week. Doing this chart also reminded me that most people sleep more than they actually work, if you're working typically a 40-hour work week. But I'm assuming most of us end up not having the purple life pie as big as it is, because work tends to creep down into that space as well, and we start to suffer. But the point being, we're dealing with a very, very small part of your life. And when we think about training, and within that small part of your life, we're trying to think about running. Okay. Add to the complication of crazy lifestyle, add to that complication that people love to go crazy with the gear, and aero bars here or aero helmet there, swim pants, lava pants, swim goggles, and those things are what they are. But you start messing around with your feet, you start messing around with your footwear, and some pretty crazy things can happen to people. And in general, very few of us are biomechanically sound enough to just go out and pound out the miles, much less do so in minimalist footwear or attire. Okay, and I think that a lot of people put themselves in danger generally by going to super lightweight shoes without transitioning correctly, without making sure they actually do have dorsiflexion in their ankles, or making sure that they can handle that work, or making sure they make that transition gradually, or with the help of a physical therapist or some other professional. They generally just say, hey, look, everyone that I know as a triathlete seems to wear these crazy shoes, so I'm going to put these crazy shoes on and I'm going to be great. And if I could, collectively, if I could have that, that 6 or 8 weeks that you lose back, because you can't run because you got to deal with these foot-related issues or lower extremity-related issues, your year would be significantly different. Okay, and so there's a combination of training being a small part of your life, locked in your office, locked in a seated position, not very active the majority of your day, but extremely active when you're outside of the office or outside of the home. That duality is very tough to manage. On top of that, add crazy equipment trends, etc. Things are definitely starting to get stacked against you. So before we dive into more specifics, I want you to step back and think about what run durability means for you, because it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. Some of you have training related durability issues, okay? And I put you in this category if you are constantly having issues, plantar fasciitis, calf strains, Achilles tightness, upper hamstring related issues, perhaps just IT band issues, things that consistently every year you can get up to 25 miles of running, and then boom, you got to back it off for a couple of weeks, and then hopefully you're like, okay, well, I'll take it easy, but then I'll build it up again for my race, and then boom, you're like, okay, well, I don't need to run the last 4 or 5 weeks to my race, I'll be fine, and then you kind of gut it out on race day. So there's a portion of athletes within our population who spend the majority of their season just sort of bouncing around between running injuries. Okay, so take a look at that. Are you that person? If you are, what is the longest sort of uninterrupted block of training you've had? It's important to ask that. I get a lot of people coming to me and saying, "Hey, I want to break a 4-hour marathon in an Ironman." Well, let me tell you, if you can't run more than 8 weeks without having some kind of a setback, that's going to be really, really hard for you to do overall. So stepping back and finding data and information about yourself is a great way to begin to move forward and improving your run fitness and overall race day performance. Okay. From the racing perspective, I want you to know, hey, what does your run look like on race day? Like, is it strong? Does it fade? Do you blow up? Do you pop? How does that run compare to your training runs? When people say a half or an Ironman is really just a long training day, they're not really joking. There's the length of the event, anything over 5 hours, really takes out the opportunity for you to perform at levels that are higher than what you've consistently done in training. In fact, many people underperform relative to what they've done in training. So, case in point, elite swimmers, they may swim 100 in 56 seconds. Right, I'm making that up. That probably is not even elite at all. Sorry, all the swimmers are laughing at me now. They swim 156 seconds, but at nationals, they hope to break that by 4 seconds. Right? For us, you may ride 112 miles at home in 6 hours, and you are just hoping that you come anywhere close to 6 hours on race day. Like, we're hoping that you get somewhere near that number. I'm not looking for you to go 5:15 and shave your legs and all of a sudden drop tons of time. I don't want race day to be any different than your training, just by virtue of how long our events are. Okay, so take a look and figure out what category do you fall in terms of the run durability issue. Some of you fall into both. Many of you will fall into the training side. Some of you will fall into it from the race side. But whatever it is, there's value on both sides of this equation for dealing um, with the run durability equation. So just to show what we're looking for from a race perspective, here is a file that shows what's the sort of classic fade of an Ironman run. Okay, and so I'm not even really looking at the pace, so you can see the pace generally slows down. What I'm looking at here is the heart rate. Okay, so we have too high of a heart rate choice, whether pace, heat, who knows what, through about mile 6 before things start to fade down. They kind of settle in to a different heart rate zip code, if you will, here from say mile 9.5 through mile 13, right? But even that is now no longer possible because of what they did earlier, and that drops down again until they hit about mile 16, where things really hit rock bottom. They really suffer. There's a couple walk breaks in here, significant. They're trying to recover. They kind of get their mojo back a little bit at about mile 20. They kind of hustle it out, but they still got to take the brace. They still got to back off. And then finally, in the last 2 miles, the finish line is close enough. You can hear Mike Riley or someone announcing, and you can kind of pull it out. Now, this is a classic fade file. I did not pull up the, oh my God, I just imploded at mile 6 and walked, because you don't need to see that file. You can guess what that is. I did not pull up the race day was great till mile 12, and then I just kind of did this walk, run thing for the last 14 miles, because you kind of also have a sense of what that looks like. But I consider this to be a fade run. Okay, let's contrast that with a more solid run file. In full disclosure, this is my 2000. It was this year, I think, 2015 Ironman Texas file. So it's a flat course, so I do have that going in my side from a heart rate perspective. Coming out of transition, you can see that I pick up a steady heart rate that I try and hold as long as I can. Right about here, right, mile 9 through mile 12, it starts to build up, and I pay a price for this. Even small heart rate cost, I have to bring it back down again and kind of consolidate. And I lose focus here. Not so pleased about that. But I am able to kind of pick it up and then be strong over the last 4 miles through the end. Okay. And so what we're looking for in race day is I expect to see your pace drop over time. That's just a function of how the race works. But those early miles, if you do it right, are generally faster because your heart rate's lower coming up out of transition. And you're running at a heart rate that you can sustain all day, a heart rate that you can maintain across the entire run segment of your race. And that's something that you've proven in training, but you not only have the fitness to do it, but you have the experience running at the pace. You know what you need to do nutritionally. Your body, quite frankly, is used to being in that space. And what we find with a lot of age group triathletes is that they're never in the space that they are going to be doing their race at for very long. And when they get into that space on race day, they're not really sure if that's where they're supposed to be. They're not sure how that feels. They don't know how to handle it. And they end up making poor decisions within that space as well. Okay. So very important you can see that. So our goal here is to synchronize the training pace and effort on the run for the half and full distance triathlons with that racing pace and effort. Okay. And it's much, if I could change fonts, I'd make the effort much bigger than the pace because I'm more concerned about effort as it ties into race day than I am particularly about pace overall. But there has to be some kind of overlap and synchronicity here for you to identify with the value of the work that you're doing now in terms of what it means for the rest of your year. And I say that because I get plenty of emails from people who say, I should be running, a 3:30 Ironman marathon, but I'm running 4-hour marathons, and I don't understand what's happening. I want to run faster. I run faster in training, but it's not. I'm not able to do it on race day. Well, being able to run that pace on race day is a function of not only the conditions and how you handle them, also obviously how you pace the bike and how smart you are there. But ultimately, it comes down to familiarity of that pace. And a lot of people will pick paces in training that they believe they can do on race day, even though they can't. So, if you, let's say, we'll tell people inside Neuro Station, hey, the first 6 miles, I want you to give me 30 seconds per mile. So if you were hoping to run 9:30s, I want you to run 10s. And so people on race week are generally like, oh, okay, I'll give you 10s. But if you and I are sitting down now in November and I say, I want you to do the majority of your run training at 10-minute miles, you're going to laugh at me. Like, I could run 8s. Why would I run 10s? But if race day comes and you're praying to whatever triathlon god you believe in that you could run a 10, there's really not a lot of value in you spending the majority of your runs at 8-minute pace now because it has zero relationship to what you're actually going to be doing on race day. I don't want to talk to you about 8s until you can show me 9s on race day. You show me 9s and we'll talk about 8s. But don't talk about 8s and throw all these 8s at me now when on race day you can barely get to a 10. Right? And so having that perspective, being able to go back and look objectively at your data and understand where you fit is super important. Okay? All right. Time to define some run durability. And just for reference point, I'm not talking about my daughter's feet on the other side. I'm talking about my feet. This is before Ironman Tremblant 2014. Got to represent the night before race day. You got to put on all the Endurance Nation tattoos, of course. Critical part of the racing kit here. I think when a lot of people think about run durability, they think about lean legs and lots of veins and all this stuff. And in many cases, that's really what it is. Stuff that's borne out over years of consistent running. And in the interest of full disclosure, I played soccer all my life until I got to college, and then in college, I rode for Boston University, head of the Charles, all that good stuff. And then I got into running after college as best I could before I got into triathlon. So for, better or for worse, I've been running for the majority of my life in some way, shape, or form. Although I will have to say that, I certainly didn't have these legs for much of my youth. I definitely was on the bigger side. And what you see is the result of tons and tons of work, which really lines up with run durability, because run durability is not something that you just go out and make this year. You can't just say, dear Santa Claus, give me run durability for Christmas. This is awesome. I have it. Just like these new aero bars and just like this new, Bluetooth connected trainer. Now I'm going to be awesome next season. Like, that couldn't be further from the truth. Run durability by definition is a long-term undertaking. Okay. It's an extension of taking your run focus outside of just a race preparation 12-week period, saying, hey, how am I going to improve this across my entire year? How am I going to do that in a way that connects not only with my race day, but keeps me focused on my goal? And when I look at this definition slide, the most important part of it is frequency and consistency. Okay. Triathletes, especially age group triathletes, are constantly having their training interrupted. They are they get sick, they have travel, they have injuries or setbacks or something else that comes up, and the net is instead of having 10 weeks or 12 weeks or 16 weeks of consistent running. They have 4 weeks with a stop, and then 6 weeks with a stop, and then an injury, and then slowly build back for 2 or 3 weeks before they get into it. And all of a sudden, that 16-week period, instead of having 16 weeks of running in it, really only has about 10 weeks of running. And it's a lot of it is overlapping running because it's going back and restarting and rebuilding again, etc. And the net is you're not really moving the needle on your run fitness across the year because of these changes and setbacks you have in your year. So how do we avoid those setbacks? First and foremost, proper pace selection is critical. Okay, this chart here, I'll let you take a look at this chart for a second. This chart here is our training zones inside endurance station. So you got heart rate on the left, you've got power for the bike, second column, third column is the perceived exertion, and then the fourth column, the red one here, is you have it, is the run. We have 5 training zones inside endurance station that we focus on. And what we've added for the run durability focus is what we call total run pace, TRP, which is essentially the midpoint of zone 1 and zone 2. So we use the Jack Daniels running methodology program, where we have the very easy running followed by progressively harder levels of running. So in the case of the athlete here, let's say my long run might be 8:45s, but my marathon pace will be 7:30s. So there's a big gap between zone 1 and zone 2, and part of that is just how the Jack Daniels running system is predisposed to not having you run too hard unless you are specifically running hard. Otherwise, you're just running easily. So the pace that we're talking about is the pace in between these two, the midpoint. So if your zone 1 pace is 10 minutes per mile and your zone 2 pace is 8:40s, then your TRP pace, that middle point there, is 9:20s for you, okay? And so go back. You can either go, if you're on the team, you've got your calculator, you can go look at it. If you're not on the team, you can go and look at any Jack Daniels website usually has a calculator, or I believe attackpoint.org or .com has a website as well with a calculator on it, and just drop in, pick a race time or a test time from the run, drop it in, see the numbers, and then see where you fit. Where does your run performance lie? Are you at running close to long run pace, which is kind of a target for the Ironman pacing? Are you close to the marathon pace here, which is closer to the target for half pacing? But regardless, what we're looking for is that run space in the middle. This is a pace that you should be able to run at consistently day in, day out, no issues. It's very close to your normal gait. One of the biggest friction points we have with zone 1 running is that people just don't know how to run any easier than what's listed there. Okay, so having a good pace determined there is super important. Okay, so most triathletes work backwards from their race. They say, I want to run, a 3:45 Ironman run, for example. So I know that's 8:30s, but I am going to walk every mile. So back out 27 seconds for those 8:30s. Now I'm at 8:03s. So I got to run 8:03s, but it's going to be hot. So I'm going to train at 7:46s. Before you know it, who knows how fast you're running. That's not how I want you to think about it. I want you to go back and take a look at your run performance, whether you think it's a good run performance or not in terms of consistency across the day. See how that pace matches with your total run pace. Is it truly that midpoint of zone 1, zone 2? If it's not, if you're not in that zip code, which the majority of people are not, then you definitely need run durability and you're definitely missing out. Okay? So what does a sample run durability workout look like? Very simple. You get your warm up anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. The older I get, the more warming up I need. Just feel it better. So plan accordingly and get yourself warmed up. I think a lot of people tend to either head out and just kind of hammer away at that main set or not. But for me, I think the warm up is still critical. And again, if we step back and say, hey, we want you to be healthy across your entire year, then I definitely want to warm up. I don't want you just to jump out of the office and start sprinting. Okay, your main set's got that steady time at that total run pace or effort in this case, that midpoint, whether it's heart rate or pace, it's right there. And then you've got a cool down, jogging, walking, whatever it is. Okay, so it's a very simple, straightforward set. So this is a pace that again you can do all day. And so from an effort perspective, it's rarely going to put you in a place where you're like, oh man, after that run, I need a massive break. It's not like a threshold run or a hill run where you're really set back. In many cases, this is just real steady, solid run. Okay, you can always adapt this workout. You can add in strides. You can change the terrain of the run to make it more challenging. As you get more consistent with your running over time, you can even, build the effort over that last mile. I'm a huge fan just in general of, kind of finishing my runs a little strong at the end, just to get in that mindset of, hey, I finished strong. I enjoy building my effort. I find that just kind of, for me personally, mentally sets myself up well for the rest of not only my runs, but also for race day as well. So what does it look like when you do a run durability workout? If you can ignore the fact that my Garmin 920 is a massive elevation issue, hey, 10,500 feet is actually pretty good for my Garmin these days. Normally I'm much closer to Everest levels. You can see how this run plays out. Okay, so I start out running, etc. kind of, ease into my run. The pace, kind of builds over the first half mile, and I, ostensibly kind of sort of settle in here. And then in the back half of my run, the elevation does drop in this particular run. I pick up my pace, and I kind of come through and finish strong. Okay. So what you'll see is that my heart rate basic is kind of building all day, except for my pit stop. And then I head back in again. And what we're looking for here is a pace that sits in that zone. So in my case, from a heart rate perspective, this is a little high. I'd like to see it closer to 142-ish. But the run pacing is right on for the effort. So I'm pretty close to my zones, but this is what I want to see. I'm not asking you to put yourself in a box. I'm not saying your heart rate can't go up. I'm not saying you have to put a cap on your heart rate. For example, if it's 142, I'm not saying you can't go above 142. As long as that average heart rate for that run is pretty close to the target number you want, it's okay to have some variability within the context of that run. I want you to still enjoy running. I'm not going to put you in a locked box. But I do want you to understand that there's, a need to kind of build your effort across that run to start off smart and be good. And what you'll see over time is that these runs will evolve. And in this case, this run, this is a snapshot I took from early November, just about 3.5 weeks ago. This same run now, I'm running closer to 7-minute pace. My heart rate is lower. And so just over time, as I get back into running, so, re-entry, time after the time off, end of the year, get back into running. Early runs, my heart rate's higher for the effort for the pace that I see out there. There needs to be some reconciliation. And as I, am consistent with my training, continue to get rest, take care of myself, etc., I see the heart rate start to drop, and the paces also start to improve a little bit as well. So over time, as the run durability work takes effect, you see how that plays out. Okay. Thinking about the run, I also want you to keep in mind what it means across a year. And I threw this chart in here from Training Peaks because I want you to understand the value of run durability across a year. So this is all of 2015 in terms of runs, and these is weekly run mileage as shown on a chart. Okay. And I kind of break it down a little bit for you. But what I want you to see here is that, people, people have a tendency to remember both personally and also in others, like the best efforts. So it's easy for me to talk about myself as a 40 miles a week kind of guy. But when I come back here and look at these numbers, I only cracked 40 miles in a week a couple times. In fact, maybe call it 8 weeks total across the entire year, I broke 40 miles. Whereas, if you'd asked me on paper, I probably would have told you it was 20 weeks, but I didn't. Not at all. In fact, my average run distance for this whole year was 28.4 miles per week. And that got me, a 929 performance at Texas. And then 10:02 in Hawaii on a pretty hot day for a great race. So it's not like you have to be putting in tons and tons of miles on the run. What's more important, and what I want you to see from this chart, is the body of running, right, across the entire year. So there's definitely some rest periods. Like I think this was school vacation week. This was the week after an Ironman. Same with this week after an Ironman. But you can see the general steady build or steady work, then a build up to a taper and a race, steady work, then a build up to a taper and a race, and so on, and then now getting back into it. So I think it's important for you to not only know what your average run data is, so you can kind of benchmark yourself against that, but also to have a better sense of how your year plays out. And if you've got bigger chunks or gaps in here, then you're really going to be setting yourself up for some challenges. All right. So part 3, what does it mean to structure run durability across your season. If you've got the run durability concept and you're like, yes, I'm a person who needs it from a training perspective, or I need it from a racing perspective, or perhaps both, then what does it mean to build that across a year? Well, here is a chart from last season's presentation on how we break out a year inside Endurance Nation. Okay, so I'm gonna let you digest this chart. What you can see moving left to right in the different colored columns. Okay, you can see that we have, yikes, come back. You can see that we have put in here the preseason, which is sort of that general rebuilding, getting back up to speed. We've got the out season, which is where we do most of our hard work. We have a focus block. Exiting the out season, we have a focus block where we dial in a specific discipline. It could be swim, could be bike, could be run, depending where you're at. Then we recover from that period, and then we head into your season. And depending on how close or far your race is, we've got different levels of work that we're putting into your race preparation period of your year. Now, the run durability stuff, and in general, what we're talking about falls into these two early sections of your year. So we don't have a race on the calendar, we don't have demands for volume per se, but we're looking to improve. And the big change for us has been right here in the out season, which is to say, we used to talk all the time about fast before far, building fast then far. Experience has now taught us that works absolutely 110% on the bike for sure, but on the run, not so much. I would rather have 3 to 4 months of really good running, building you up to some solid run fitness, and then use this focus block to put some run speed on the solid legs and sustainable run fitness that you have before we head into the rest of this year. Contrast that with past years where we would have you hit the effort level and the intensity fairly soon out of the gate in the out season. You're going to see a big change, especially those of you who've been on an older out season plan before joining us this season for 2016 or beyond. Okay, so I got to figure out how to turn off all my notifications showing up on my dashboard. I apologize for that. So as we think about what we're going to be doing in the course of your year, the run durability element starts here, but it's really kind of carry you through the rest of your season. And we're going to focus on it here in the wintertime because we don't have the targets of races. We don't have a demand to do swim, bike, and run at high levels. We have a lot more flexibility. Plus, for most of us, the weather just stinks. Like it's just really, really bad, and it's just not great. It's not great to be trying to push your bodies by going too hard, trying to basically dial in what you're going to be doing in season with what you're doing early in the year. And you can do that from a run durability perspective by being consistent, by being focused on a pace that's going to carry you through the rest of your year. But previously, we had to do a lot of sort of higher intensity work that wasn't necessarily related and didn't necessarily translate well to the rest of your year. So we're trying to change that for sure heading forward. So what would that look like from inside Endurance Nation's perspective? And so what we're looking for, we have some goals for you. And I set these goals apart because I wanted you to think about running frequency first before you thought about any type of distance. And so the first and foremost thing I want you to think about is a frequency goal. So I'm expecting from a beginner perspective, I'm expecting you probably start at 4 runs a week. We can hopefully eventually build it up to say 6 runs. Intermediate folks, you got 5 to 7. Advanced folks, 6 to 8. So the net is when you're thinking about run durability work, it's lots of little runs. So I think I'm running 6 days a week right now. And this past week, one of my days was a double day. So I had 7 runs this past week. This week, I'm going to be moving it up. I think I can't stay at 7 runs this week, but I'm going to add a little distance to them so I can continue to push the number forward on the volume side. And so the net is I want you to think about that frequency element of it first. Find out where you're at, see what you've done the last 6 weeks, and then we're going to gradually build yourself up. Okay. Inside Endurance Nation, we've also added some targets for the out season. So for beginner folks, we want you eventually to build up to 26 to 30 miles a week. Many of you right now, those of you who started with us In the November out season, many of you are in kind of 24 miles a week range. For the intermediate folks, I'm going to build you up 20 to 32 miles, and the advanced folks, you're 30 to 35 miles a week. The goal basically is when we have you exit the out season and you're entering your year. For example, in these more advanced athletes, you could be averaging 35 miles a week, which if we go back to the previous stuff, you'll see that I only averaged 28.4 miles. And so when you think about it, for someone like me to put myself at 35 miles a week on average now, this early in the year, that's a significant leap over what I've done in the past. And again, I want to hammer home the need for you to relate the work we're discussing here, and you think about run durability, to what you've done in the past. If you've typically averaged 20 miles a week across a year, I don't want you to go out and try and hit 35 miles a week. More is not better in a situation where you're going to basically undermine the effect of the run durability program by overloading yourself with your training. Okay. So by target races, here's another slide for you to look at in terms of what I'm hoping you'll get to. These are not secrets. These are not keys. They do not guarantee awesome race performance, but overall, they do have there is a synchronicity between these distances and more elite levels of performance. Of course, some of you have injuries or considerations where you can't do that much mileage. And obviously, as a coach, I would work with you in the forums and we manage that out. But in general, these are some targets you should be thinking of. So, in the half distance, if you're exiting the out season at 28 miles a week, you're pretty close to what you'd want to be doing for the rest of your year. You're already in a pretty good place. And the value here is that you'll be able to add, as you start adding more bike volume, and adding the swimming in, you're adding that volume and that swim on top of this run foundation that you already have in place. And you get to carry that run through another 12 weeks or 20 weeks, depending on how the duration of your race preparation plan. And that's just double the time, right? You just get double as much time at that consistent running. And ultimately, when you think about building a year, that's what really makes a difference, okay? So where is the speed? Like, where does the speed come? So I wanted to work through this and show you again from my charts perspective, you get a sense for where the speed happened in my year. So you can see where I built for Texas, taper race, where I built for Hawaii, a little bit of a bigger build, try to do more volume in this push, taper, and then race. What you see before each of those periods is a 6-week block where I did more consistent training. And this training was generally closer to 30 miles, although in the case of between Texas and Kona, I was pretty darn exhausted. And so I really took a lot of downtime and didn't do a ton of training. It's more, just running, 18, 15 miles a week, et cetera, except for 2 bigger weeks. But what I was doing basically was saying, hey, when my volume is low on the run, I can do more intensity on the run. The lower volume on the run gives me the bandwidth to handle a higher training stress. But as the run volume goes up to match the demands of what I have for myself on race day, then the effort level has to go down and the speed essentially goes away. I go from hoping to hit threshold numbers to, hey, how close can I stay to that target run pace for my race, and how much time can I spend there to be more prepared, nutritionally, mentally, physically, physiologically, for a good race day. So there's still opportunities for speed, but they fall into different segments of your year, and they generally run outside the realm of the race preparation phase that you have. Okay, so super important for you to think about. All right, so part 4, moving along here, trying to make up some time for you guys. Sorry, run durability in your training plan. All right, again, I want you to step back and just remember how much running has taken up in terms of your year. And so here is a chart from my Training Peaks account that shows what I did across the season. So just under a third of my training was the run. The rest was swim and other, and then tons and tons of bike. And at the end of the day, you're a triathlete. When people come to me and say, I need to be better at running, I ask them about their bike, because you're a triathlete. And when you run on race day, it follows after a massive bike. That bike performance and that bike fitness really dictates what you're going to be able to do on the run. And so at the end of the day, a lot of it comes from the bike and improving the bike. So I want you to just remember, when we talk about making changes, we're really only talking about this one part of your overall system, okay? So within that context, what does a basic week look like for run durability? So here's a sample running week from the out season that we do now in the wintertime. And you'll see that we basically have 3 brick runs, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Then we have a medium long run on Wednesday and a medium long run on Sunday. And then we have an optional run on Friday. And so, beginner athletes will do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Intermediate athletes will do the same, perhaps a bit more on Saturday. And advanced athletes will add in this optional run on Friday. That allows each group to achieve the frequency and distance that they require to continue moving the needle on their fitness. But more importantly, you can see how we balance out target runs or key runs, which in this case would be Wednesday and Sunday, with more frequent runs on the shorter scale, which are these brick runs, and then optional runs as well. Okay, so you can kind of see how the run week plays out from an out-season perspective. Now we head out of the out-season, and many of us will be heading into a run-focused period of time. In this case, quality runs are now on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So we go from 2 quality runs to 3 quality runs. And the nature of these quality runs changes. All of a sudden, we're spending time at Tuesday at run threshold pace, and on Thursday at that VO2 pace, the zone 5, quite high effort level pace. And commensurately, we're still maintaining some form of a long run on the Sunday that allows us to build up that speed, but not sacrifice what we've already built up on the endurance side. So a bit of a change here in the run focus to get more quality running into your program, still keep the frequency up. Okay. Then we move into race prep. From a race prep perspective, things are definitely different, right? The big bikes are Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday inside the team. And so that means we've got a quality run on Tuesday before you dive into the week, your long run on Thursday. Everything else is a brick run or optional across your day. The only difference is the Sunday, where we recommend athletes who run slower than 12 minutes per mile in their training for their long runs, that they reduce the bike duration on that Sunday workout from 3 hours down to say 2 or 1.5, and they fill that time gap, the time that they've saved, with another medium long run to get the numbers up. Because for fitter and faster athletes with a higher VDOT, the Jack Daniels VDOT, you might across your week you might be able to run 40 miles, say on 5 days of running, but that athlete who's running 12 minute per mile, they're only in the 30-31 range, so they're not getting that run volume in. And I don't want to extend that long run and really kind of hammer on them too much. I'd rather separate that long run out to another session, put it on the back half of a bike, get much better about the pacing side of things, develop that mental toughness. When I get off the bike, I go for a run, kind of dial that stuff in. So that's what that looks like. And again, I want to reiterate, when you think about running across a year, you can see the different types of work. There's the Ironman week, which has a lot of running and some significant long runs. Contrast that with these faster speed weeks where you've got lower level of volume, but much higher intensity overall. And when you dive into that chart, you'd see that while the numbers are down, the intensity factor for these runs is definitely some of the highest of the year, because I'm doing some significantly faster running during these periods. Okay, so part 5, last part of the day here before I get into FAQs and then the questions from you guys. This is a shot of me taking off for my 40 miles on my 40th birthday. Got my friends and my family starting with me here, having some fun. Nothing like fun in spandex in the winter. So how do you essentially build a habit that you can sustain? Run durability is it's not sexy. It's just something you do every day, but you do it every day and it becomes more of who you are. The cost of doing those runs, etc., they're not hard anymore because it's just what you do. You put your shoes on and you run. It's rainy, you run. It's snowing, you run. It's hot, you run. It's cold, you run. You're busy, you run. You're tired, you run. You just put on those shoes and you run. And because it's run durability pace, I'm not asking you to go out and run your best 5K. I'm not asking you to go out and run zone 4. I'm not asking you to go out and run on a hill in the ice. If it's snowy, you can still run steady. If it's cold, you can put on more clothes and run steady. If it's hot, you just run steady. Running steady, it just adds up over time, So think of it like, the U.S. Post Office, right? It's done. Rain, sleet, snow, whatever. Your junk mail is going to get to your door. All right. So some tracking, I think, is super important. Online training logs, got a bunch on the sidebar now. So many devices and everything, they all just connect automatically. For me, when I get back and turn off my Garmin at the door, and when I get into my house, it automatically syncs with my phone. Everything pushes up. I can all of a sudden see my progress across a week and the number of runs that I'm doing and how that matches to what I want to do for my own goal setting. That's huge. And that makes life a lot easier, and also keeps me honest. There's a huge, as a coach, there's a huge disconnect between what you say you're going to do as an athlete and then what you actually do. The gap between those two, your ability to be as realistic as possible, there's definitely a correlation between the faster athletes and the ones who are more honest with not only me, but themselves about their training. The folks who are like, oh yeah, I think I've done like an 11:15 at Lake Placid. And then you go back and find out it was actually like a 13:15. Like that person is just not in touch with who they are as an athlete. And just like if you think that you're running 40 miles a week, but you go back and look at the data, it's 28, you're not in touch with something there. You're missing something, and your race performance is definitely not going to map with the work that you've done. You got a surprise coming in July when you do Lake Placid. Let's change that. Let's dive into those numbers, right? And more importantly, I hat tip to Tom Spinner, keep me focused on my Hokas and changing up my run shoes. Keep that equipment fresh, especially if you're doing more running. Those run miles will add up. You want to keep that going, okay? Streaking, no, it's not what you think it is, and no, I'm not going to put a picture on this page at all of that kind of stuff. Sorry, don't want any of that associated with the Endurance Nation brand, but truly, 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 frequency is the key. I'd rather have 7 runs than 4 runs. I'd rather have 2-a-day runs of 1.5 miles each than longer runs. I just want more frequent running, more times running a week, more times starting runs when your better runs are, when you're more mindful, than just runs where you kind of zone out after 15 minutes, right? I'd like you to set targets for runs versus distance per run. So 7 runs versus 26 miles. I'd rather you focus on the process goals, not the outcome goals, okay? And ultimately, give yourself a target. Set a stretch a week that you're going to reach towards. Give yourself a goal. So in my case, right now, I'm building to hopefully hit a 60-mile run week, the last week of December, that Christmas to New Year's. God only knows what the weather is going to look like, but I'm going to do everything I can fitness-wise to get myself up to that. So I've given myself a target, something to be motivated for, and something that's going to keep me going now early in the year. You want to have fun. There's lots of different ways to do it, from running with groups and running with clubs to exploring new areas. This is super easy. I do this all the time. Head over to Strava, see what segments are in your area, go out and run those segments, connect your route to those segments. You can do the same with Map My Run, Garmin Connect. There's plenty of ways to see where other people in your neighborhood are running. Go out there and do it. It's not that you're trying to win the segment. It's just like, hey, I didn't know you could run over there. People run over there. Let me go check it out. So have fun. Don't run your normal routes. Don't lock yourself in a box trying to hit the same paces. Just go out there and have fun. Okay. All right. Before I dive into your questions, and please put them in there, I'm coming over to them in a second. Here are some frequently asked questions that I get about the Run Durability Program. So, how can you even tell that it's working? Well, on one level, it's the charts and the darts, right? I can tell that last year, I averaged 28 miles per week, and this year I'm averaging 32. I'm doing better than last week. So in some cases, it's more about the process than the outcomes. I already know it's working because I'm doing more, right? So I'm good from that perspective. But more importantly, over time, you'll see that, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see that heart rate start to drop as you become more efficient running. You'll also start to see that pace for that same sort of perceived effort drop as well. And so you'll know the Run Durability Program is working when going out for a run mentally is nothing. It's just what you do, going out for 5 miles. But more importantly, you're starting to see some of those paces come around. When you get back and sync things up or take a look at the watch, you're actually kind of surprised that you ran 7:05s instead of 7:15s, because it sure as heck felt the same, and there was no real difference. In fact, it was even windier than today. So for one, I look at that. Okay. You also know if you get more and more comfortable at that effort as compared to what you've seen on race day. So, if you look at your race day file and you say, oh, my average heart rate on race day was, 140, and you're trying to do 140 paces now in your training, and it's, either you're doing your 140 heart rate, and your pace is, crazy slow. That'll change over time as the pace starts to come down. You get familiar with that heart rate zone. But also the bandwidth or the ability to run at that heart rate grows as well. So you get used to spending time at that 140 heart rate. You get familiar with what that heart rate is. You can kind of lock it in, but you also are able to build some depth at that speed, much closer to what you do on race day, and it's better than what you would see on race day, right? Another question I just got this emailed in yesterday. How do you reduce that sort of flat feeling? Because the mileage starts to go up and your frequency increases, people start to feel kind of flat. Well, in many ways, run durability is a blunt instrument. So I don't expect you to feel light and springy when you've only had 8 hours between runs. Like that's not necessarily the case. I would say that in my case, I take my Sundays off from running. I come back on Mondays. Mondays, my run feels awesome. Even Tuesday, they feel great because my legs are still fresh. I don't have a lot of fatigue in them. So as long as you're still having spring in your step when you're supposed to after some rest days, etc., then you should be good. If despite rest, no matter what you have, you're still feeling that fatigue, and we know that your nutrition is good and you're getting good sleep, then it may be time for you to kind of change with that mileage. Maybe drop that mileage down. I'll take, let's say you built yourself up to 32 miles in a week and you just feel awful and you're not enjoying it, etc. Dial it back for a week. Take it down to 20 or take it down to 16. Cut it in half. Go crazy. Try and keep the same number of runs. Just instead of doing 5 miles, you're doing 2 miles, and just really drop it down. Get the frequency in, but keep it super super short, and then build it back up again the next week. It could just be your system kind of needs a little bit of a reset, but more often than not, I find that it's a bigger issue: food, overall rest, etc. As mileage and volume go up, so too does that run then begin to creep into other areas of your life where there may be some friction. Okay. So you also get questions about, is the pace the same? Is the pace the same all year long? Do you still do the same pace? If I do this, am I doing the same pace in November that I'm doing in August before Tremblant? What does it mean? Well, the answer is no. Like, as I mentioned earlier and showed you that run file, I don't want you to lock yourself in, for example, at 140, and you can't go over and you can't go below, and that's a failure. As you'll see from my run, I started off lower and I finished higher. My average heart rate was pretty close to where I wanted it to be. It was a little high. That's okay. So you can have some variety and different effort level in your run pace as long as that average sits where we want it to be. Now, as you get closer to your race day, we're going to have you try and run more closely to that run target, because I want you to get very, very familiar with fueling and pacing and demands on your body at that effort level. So in many ways, I become a little more focused on exactness in terms of pace and heart rate. And usually that dovetails well with what most people are experiencing, because quite frankly, when the volume goes up, they're pretty darn tired and they're not really interested in overachieving. Overachieving, with 6 weeks to go to race day is just showing up and doing the workout, because it's just so much at that point in time. So the paces do change a little bit, but more than that, our focus changes on what we want you to do. So there's much more race-specific running in that last period. And we'll include some different variety of paces with those focus blocks. But for now, all the work you're doing with the Run Durability program is setting the stage, maintaining that run fitness, where in our case, you're adding the bike work through the out season. And we're going to take all of that and drive it into a run focus block where we'll really kind of change the paces and go forward.
All right, folks. Hey, all right, there we go. I hope you enjoyed the session. I'm here to answer any questions people have in the chat. If folks want to leave them in there for me, I'm happy to go through it. Let me clean up. Let me remove the screen here, so we have that. I want to thank folks for tuning in. Run durability ends up being, as you kind of heard a little bit today, the most important part of what our season looks like, simply because it's a consistent baseline activity that sets us up for success across the rest of our season. And just as importantly, microdosing your run is actually like super fun to do. You can build a streak. So it kind of engages that gamification side of our brain. And then just as importantly, you can get a good amount of work done in 15, 20 minutes. Like it feels like a workout, right? If I told you to swim for 15 minutes, you'd say, why did I drive to the pool and put my swimsuit on, right? You want to ride your bike for 15 minutes, like 20 minutes, like, but you barely made it down the end of the street. You had to flip it, come back. Like, what is that, right? That's the shakedown ride before your key session. Whereas in reality, being able to come across and kind of get those runs in adds up, right? And it doesn't have to be, let me type in the chat here. It doesn't have to be something where you're trying to run fast or anything else. Like we talked about in run durability, it's the streak. And you'll start off slow and small, and that's the way it's meant to be. So it might go super slow, and then eventually what you'll do is be able to build up, where you get to a place where you may be doing 4 runs a week for the first week or two, but to a place where you're doing like 6 runs a week, And in some cases, you maybe even eventually graduate to a place where you're doing double runs, right? Where you're doing like a 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon as well. It's a great way to kind of play a fun game. And it actually helps on some levels with not just keeping you fit without the requisite load, which is a key part of making sure that we're getting ready for our winter training. Our winter training protocols are reminders of the out season, and we do a fair amount of work in the out season. We want you to show up fresh and sharp and ready to do the work, but not too fatigued, right? People who finish a big Ironman season and plug it right into the out season generally have a really tough time. They can fake the funk for 6 to 8 weeks, then they really taper off and they run out of energy. And that's where that middle section here of the Run Durability program actually sets you up. It keeps you out of trouble. The reason why we created Run Durability program, for aside from what you heard today, is also just making sure that we're problem proofing people, because people will opt into the most challenging, hardest thing. They'll say, hey, did you see that event? It's the 229.029. I'm just going to go to Tremblant this weekend, not for the Ironman. That was earlier. I'm going to go to Tremblant this weekend and just run up and down this mountain 15 times. That's my fun idea, and I'll get back to training on Monday. Doing cool stuff with your fitness, totally recommended. Doing cool stuff with your fitness and trying to drive that into a normal training program, not recommended, and could really get you in trouble. That's where Run Durability comes in and gives you a project, a problem to solve, and something that by solving it, you're setting yourself up for success. Think of it like, when some of those people have babies, those people, not me, putting like music on your wife's belly. So like they're listening to Mozart, like it makes them smarter. Who knows, right? Blah, blah. Run Durability is like that, except scientific. And except you're not a baby, you're a runner, you're an adult, and you're going to crush your season when we get you set up. Okay. Well, awesome. I don't see any questions here inside the chat. But I will let you know that I do answer questions online all the time. When I send a follow-up email to everyone, I'll send you a link where you can post questions that I can put into our regular podcast, which comes out once a week and talks about all things endurance. If you haven't already, go check us out at endurancestation.us. On that page, a whole bunch of free resources for you, from race execution to our winter training protocol to how to develop habits, etc. An opportunity for you to plug yourself into the system that is Endurance Nation. There's even a button there where you can go to Roadmap, which is our season planning protocol that we will use to either get you set up for your season or plug you into Endurance Nation, whichever way you want to go. All right. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope this Run Durability presentation was helpful to you. Don't be a stranger. Endurance Nation has been here since 2007. We plan to make it to the 20-year mark for sure. I myself have been doing Ironman races since 2001. Hard for me to actually say that. But across myself and the team, you have thousands of athletes putting up results and building experiences, information, data bank, creating opportunities like training camps that just happened in Montana for gravel that are unparalleled in the endurance space. We're a family, and we'd love to have you join us, become part of the team, get faster, get stronger, get smarter, and make some new friends as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic day. I look forward to seeing you at our next session, or maybe even inside the community. Be well.